So, and I learned this lately. I did it myself, right? I figured it out. I was going in, you're pushing these low interest rates to buyers and you say, hey, right now rates are 7% out there on the resale market. What if I can get you 3.99%? Oh, wow, that sounds good. And next thing you know, you're in a new construction, a new home community, and you're selling a new home because they have a 3.99% rent. What I figured out is essentially the buyers are paying for that. It's added on to their price. So with some builders,
they're not that generous.
Yeah, they're not that generous. They want to sell homes, low payments sell homes, but somebody's got to pay that cost. What I found out talking to some of the builders reps is the cost of those incentives is about 9% of the purchase price. So as I got deeper into conversation with some of these builders, I realized that you had two options going in. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you've only got your 3.5% to buy, well, the low interest rate is going to make the most sense for you because it's going to give you the lowest payment. Now, if you've got some money where you're putting a significant amount of money down, instead of those incentives, you can now get the price about 9% lower, give or take, depending on the builder, obviously, but 9% lower. Well, 9% on a $500,000 home is $45,000.
Right.
So if you don't need the incentives right now, today as it sits, I would get the lower price.
Well, and you got to remember too, during COVID, the builders would not sell to investors.
Yeah.
They was owner occupied only. And so now, they're a business like any other business. Now they're not as picky. They're like, we just want to sell the house.
Yep.
So if you have an investor, especially a cash investor, they can come in and they can swoop that house for way lower than what the neighbor does. Now, you were telling me how this affects appraisals. So what I found that interesting, that it doesn't really affect appraisals too much.
In what sense? As far as here's a scenario, and I'll use my experience as a for instance, right? So I went in and I'm looking at this one plan in Radiance. It's a DR Horton community. And this particular plan is called the Caroline plan. The builder's selling it for about $440,000. With that, at that $440,000, you get a 3.99% rate. You get $6,000 in closing costs. And I said to the builder, okay, let's strip this down. Let's get to the lowest price. Take out the concessions. Take out any incentives, the closing costs, take it all out. What's the lowest price I can get? By the time I was done, I got the price at $380,000. That's a $60,000 difference.
Yeah, it's a massive difference.
So I bought the home at $380,000, right? I mean, I bought the home at $380,000. I put money down on it. But my rate is 5.99%. Which isn't horrible, right?
No.
I bought it right when that rate started to dip before the Iran conflict. Then it started going back up. But anyways, so I got $60,000 off the price, and now I've got a great rental property.
So you came in with your own lender, though, on that one.
I came in with my own lender on that one.
Yeah.
Let me give you the opposite side of that scenario. You go into these, and these are the conversations I'm having with my buyer. Not every agent is doing this because you could lose deals by doing it.
True.
So maybe they're avoiding that conversation. But the conversation has got to be with a new buyer in a new construction community where you're getting the incentives. Do you plan to live in this home for at least 5 years? And if the answer to that is no, then I would be very careful with taking the incentives because it's marked up into the price. So for instance, I bought that home at $380,000. I could turn around and sell it if I need to sell it because the other homes are selling at $440,000 of the same floor plan. Now, if the person that bought it at $440,000 needs to turn around and sell it, and they try to sell it at $440,000, well, they're going to be selling it at $440,000 with a regular resale interest rate, and buyers are not going to pay that price for a regular interest rate.
So they'd be competing with the builder, whereas if you put yours up for say $440,000, or you have room to negotiate, they don't.
Because I can sell mine for $420,000 and still walk away with a profit.
And then they can still get a better deal than going direct.
When they sell theirs for $420,000, they've got to pay both agents. And they've got to pay, you know what I mean? And now they've got to, and they took a loss because they lost $20,000 right off the bat. Yeah. So for instance, I had a seller a little bit further south there, and they bought the home 2 years ago for $505,000. There's actually some resales in that community. In that community, those resales were selling for $475,000. So that tells you right there, without the interest rates, property's worth somewhere around $475,000. Well, the market started to shift a little bit, and by the time we got that thing sold, it was $450,000. At the end of the day, that's an $80,000 loss for that buyer.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Now, they went in and bought, when they bought that home a couple years ago, they didn't have a real estate agent. So there was nobody to explain to them that if you're not planning to stay here for 5 years and you're buying these incentives, there's a chance that you're going to take a big loss.
Well, and this goes back to the remember when I said?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you sell a house that backs up to a busy road. Can you get a good deal on it? Yes, but when you go to sell it, you're also going to have to hand that same deal off to the buyer. You're going to be less expensive than the house across the street that doesn't back up to the busy road.
Yep. So you have to have that conversation when you're selling that to your buyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've done that. I've been standing in the backyard with the seller going, remember when we were standing in the same backyard as a buyer and I told you that? They're like, yeah, I knew you were going to bring that up. I'm like, and that's why I brought it up, because I didn't want to be the agent standing in the backyard going, oh, this house is great, you should buy it, trying to sell them the house.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, going, oh yeah, this backyard's going to kill you. And they're going to be like, well, why didn't you tell us that 4 years ago?
Yeah.
They'd fire me on the spot, and they should.